At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast, whether you are on Circle, Patreon, or Facebook. Thank you for everything, and this week has been an amazing week. I'm out here in Colorado. The past couple days, I've been teaching Aurora 911, hosted my 8-hour communications course, so now I'm here within Aurora 911 in the center, and we're recording episodes highlighting some of their 911 professionals, and I'm going to be going inside and just doing like a quick filming of their center, what it looks like, and some of the awards that they have up. And they also have a disco ball. I'm serious. There's a disco ball. I already got a picture of it. Someone said that I needed to dance underneath it to make it official. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see. But I'm here and having a lot of fun. And I've got my next guest here with me. And his name is Mario, or Mario, if you got, roll the R's and everything else. Emergency Specialist number 3 with Aurora 911 Colorado. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. My voice is a little, caca. It's a little messed up because I've been talking for the past couple of days and everything else. But I'm excited to be here with you and your crew and everyone, and learn more about you guys. So, how did you get involved in public safety to begin with? Well,
it started when I went to EMT school. So I started going to EMT because I wanted to get into like the medical field eventually.
Yeah.
So I did an EMT at Aurora Community College, and then part of your requirements was to do a ride along with the fire department. So once I went into the ride along with the fire department, like I just got hooked. And still my goal is eventually get into the fire department.
Yeah.
But like I started here like to get my feet in the door. I mean, I've been here 6 years, but still, because it's hard to get into the fire department, So
yeah,
it's super hard. It's very competitive. So, but still trying to hit a goal. Like I kind of did stop pursuing it, but because I like it here, I got comfortable, but I like it. And that's kind of how it started.
Nice. So what are some of the things that you liked about it? Because there's a lot of people that I've spoken to, over the years and such, and myself as well. When I was in dispatch, I don't come from a public safety family or anything like that. I just kind of stumbled into it. My family, one of my cousins, her husband knew the chief of police. They were hiring for dispatchers, and they're like, you should try it. And I said, okay. And I went and I got into it, and it got into my blood right away. So, what were some of the things that kind of really have kept you here?
I think I don't have anybody like a family, like I guess like that are alive that are like in public safety, but I know that my grandfathers, like from the past, like they were all like police officers. I know that one of my grandpa's brother was a police officer in Mexico, and everything was all in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I feel like somewhere in there, it's in there. It's genetic
literally
in there.
in your blood. Yeah.
So and like my grandpa's brother's son, like he's a police officer too. So like it kind of just go there, and I think that's where I get it from. But I just got hooked. I'm an adrenaline junkie. So the adrenaline that you get here, because you don't
Yes,
know
true.
what you're gonna
Yes.
get, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I called it like phone Russian roulette,
Yeah,
because you don't know what you're gonna get.
exactly.
So
I
that's
like that.
Yeah.
I that's one term that I have not heard. Yes, I
Yeah.
like that. Yes, yeah, because there's it changes every single time. People would ask me, "What is it like in there?" I'm like, "Well, it's hard to explain
Yeah.
because it runs the gamut of all different kinds of things. It's like going on Wheel of Fortune." And just spinning that wheel, and whatever it lands on basically is what happens, exactly the way you were saying it. So what was it like in the beginning when you were first training? So, like you said, you started in as an EMT, right? In that service and all. So you're kind of listening in the radio, but then when you walk into dispatch, what is that like for you?
It's different because you don't get to see anything, you know what I mean? You're just hearing it. So like your mind can just go like all over the place, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, so at first it was nerve wracking. Like I would get not scared, but like sometimes I kind of like would freeze a little bit, like on the first calls when I was training. But once you get more comfortable with it, and once you know like what you're doing and learning the system, like it gets easier, and like you kind of just, all right, like it just comes natural to you, which is kind of weird. Like, people say like, how can you like be natural when someone's screaming on the other end?
That's true.
You know, like, but I guess like I'm saying we're wired like that, you know, and like we just kind of have to do what we have to do. It's our job, and just get help out there.
So what were you doing before you got into public safety?
So before I was working at call centers. So I worked for different call centers. The last one before here was at a mortgage call center. Just doing mortgages, like loan modifications and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at. And then like the market's always back and forward. So they cut down the company because they sold it. So then like I was like, well, I need to get into something that's going to be consistent. And like I took the opportunity. Yeah, I took the opportunity. I was like, well, medical field is always like, good. So I started going into the EMT, and that's kind of how it led me. And then now I'm here.
So I have another question because of how you said where you started and everything. When people would call in for like the mortgages and all the other stuff, were people ever like angry?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So do you feel like some of those conversations maybe kind of got you ready in a way for some of the stuff that you were going to be doing
the yelling and stuff? Yeah, like I guess so. Yeah, because like you get yelled at, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't my fault that you unfortunately got behind, but they were still yelling at us because we couldn't help or we were delaying the help. In the mortgage, obviously. But yeah, like you do get used to like getting yelled at, especially in the call center when you work at a call center. So
yeah, and I say that too because before dispatch, I worked in retail management.
Okay.
So sometimes customers would come in and they would be pissed off because they didn't get the discount right, or they felt like they should have gotten a bigger discount.
Yeah.
So they're like yelling at me, and I'm just standing there face to face, listening, trying to remain calm and patient, but also in my head trying to figure out what to say and still stay professional.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you get into 911, it's happening again. It's just not in your face. But like you said, you're piecing all of it together. So as you were saying too, was that hard, that transition hard as well? Because you go from being hands-on with people and, like you said, seeing things, and now you can't be hands-on. And I tell people this all the time, that when you're on the phone with someone, sometimes you feel helpless, like you want to reach through the phone to try to help them, but you can't. So was that a hard transition?
Not really. I didn't feel like it was a hard transition. I mean, that's just me. Like for some people, like I can see that they struggle a little bit, like being also a trainer, like I can see how like the new hires like kind of struggle a little bit. I feel like I didn't struggle that much.
Yeah.
But I obviously had my questions on like what to do and what to handle and stuff like that. But I don't think it was a very hard transition. I just kind of took it for what it was, and like, refer back to our training and like the systems that we have that helps us provide the help, and like kind of rely on that, and like the rest just kind of goes with the flow. Like,
I like that.
Yeah.
So, do you remember some of your earlier calls?
I mean, not my like early ones calls. I mean, I do remember when I first started, because I cleared to be phones on like the month of June. And then I was working, they gave me nights because you have to start at the bottom, right? So they always give you nights.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then the next month, like it was July, 4th of July is like insane. Like,
geez,
with calls. And at that time we were short staffed. So we got our asses handled that night,
Yeah.
like, cause just call after call after call after call, and I was like, whoa, like, it wasn't like crazy calls, but it was just people calling for fireworks,
Right. Yes.
and like, and we know that, so the ones that go up in the air are illegal, and like, we understand that, and like people are still calling to complain about it, which I get,
Right. Yeah.
but it's just overloaded, and like I was like, whoa, is this it for me? But like after that, I was like, it was just that night, and once that midnight happened, like it kind of cooled off, and it was fine.
Yeah, because a lot of, and for those who are watching and listening, like you won't know unless you've ever done it, but a lot of people call in because they're saying, I hear rapid fire, like gunfire. I hear this, but then you want to say, but you don't, because you got to stay professional. But like sometimes in my head, I would want to respond with, well, do you hear it fizzle? Because if there's a fizzle after it, like it's not a gunshot.
Yeah, it's not a gunshot. Yeah.
Right. But also a lot of people, we would say, because there were so many, and I don't know how you guys do it here, but we would have an officer just do like extra patrol. But sometimes because it would get so busy, we wouldn't send an officer out unless that caller wanted contact. Yep. So we would say to the caller, like, do you want them to make contact with you? They're like, no, I'm just letting you know. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put it out over the air.
Exactly how it is. Yeah,
okay.
we have officers that are hooked up with the fire department.
Yeah.
So because I think the fire department is the one that gives the fines, if they do give a fine for it. But yeah, they're like, they have special like units that are patrolling around just for fireworks. But the same thing, like if they don't want to like point out who it was or where the fireworks were coming from, like usually they don't make contact.
Oh man, so you mentioned the 4th of July and everything, and how it gets busy and everything. And I remember when I first started dispatching, in Florida, and it was New Year's Eve, and I was working a 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift, and I was close to getting off of there, and I get a phone call from someone saying there's somebody playing loud music. I know it's New Year's Eve and everything, but they're being really loud. And they started describing the house, and they told me where it was at, and I realized that was my house.
Oh wow!
It was my family's house that had the loud music playing. So they got all these cumbias, like, going and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God! I said, okay, we'll get somebody out there. And I let the officer know, and he goes, isn't that your house? And I said, yeah. And he started laughing, and he goes, are you going to call your family to let them know I'm heading that way? And I said, if I'm allowed to. And he goes, go ahead. So I put it out over the air, and then the chief of police calls me, and he goes, isn't that your house? And I said, yes, sir, it is. And he started laughing too. And he goes, have a good night. I was like, yeah, thanks. So the officer checks out there. Well, he's headed there. And I call my mom, and nobody answers. Finally, she answers the phone. And I said, Mom, you guys need to turn the music down. And she goes, how do you know? And I said, somebody called. And she goes, are you sending an officer? Oh, he's here. Mijo, he's here. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what you're going to. So the officer was out there for a while.
Okay.
And then he cleared, and he comes back to the center and or to the PD, and he walks in, and he's just kind of like rubbing his stomach. And I said, what are you doing? And he goes, your family fed me all kinds of tamales and tacos and everything. That's why I didn't come back.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Yeah. So when I got home, my mom goes, Mijo, I'm really sorry, but we fed the officer, and so everything is okay.
Like, okay.
I was like, I guess. Jeez. Yeah. So yeah. So you talking about that and stuff, I don't know why, but it reminded me of that early one. And so, out of all of these 6 years and everything, have there been, and of course, only if you feel comfortable sharing, have there been any kind of calls that kind of have stuck with you a little bit?
Yeah, there's one that like not haunts me, but like I can still hear it. Like it was I think it was a domestic, I believe it was a domestic. Dad was, going through like mental problems and just kind of going wild. Daughter and mom were locked in the bathroom. Daughter is the one that calling. I think she was like 13, 12-year-old girl that was calling. And just telling me everything that was going on. The dad was outside. He had a knife on him. And he was just kind of going crazy. I can hear him yelling and stuff and throwing things down. And as officers were like going to the call, and then like all of a sudden I hear like a door like break open, and like she's like, "Oh, you just opened the door," and then like I heard her like screaming like crazy, like bloody murder.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "He just slit his throat." So the dad slit his throat like right in front of them.
Jeez.
And yeah, like I was like, "Whoa!" Like, you know, I kind of like froze a little bit because of hearing that, and like her scream, the way that she screamed. I was like, stuff, shit's going down.
Right.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and so right away I let my dispatcher know. I was like, "Hey, like this guy just like slit his throat. He survived. Like they took him to the hospital. Like he didn't like, you know, was anything like deep or anything. But
Right.
just like I can only imagine that little girl seeing her dad doing that, you know."
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
I think that's one of the major calls that like really stuck out.
Those are the ones, and I try to tell. I mean, you just talking about, you gave me goosebumps talking about it, because I remember a lot of calls like that as well. And I've told people many times, like, especially when someone will say, you know, "What's the worst call you've ever taken?" I'm like, you really don't want to know, because some of that stuff, you know, I still hear even all these years later after being out of dispatch. I don't want to put you through that, but let me tell you like a funny call. You know, and sometimes when people are asking, those are the ones that they're really looking for, some of those funny ones, but they always say worse, like crazy is what they mean instead.
And I always tell them, like, you know, well, your crazy is different than my crazy.
That's true.
You know, because we're dispatchers, like we're crazy. We have to be in order to work here.
Right.
So I tell them, like, define your crazy, because like, you know, I have a lot of stuff that I can tell you, but you know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, I love the way you put that. Your crazy is different from my crazy. I love that. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, it has been awesome to have you on here and learn more about you and everything. And, you know, I wish you well in the rest of your career and stuff. And especially going, you know, wanting to go into the fire department as well and stuff. And I've got one last question for you, but if you, with all the knowledge that you have now, your experience in dispatch, these whole 6 years and such, if you could go back to the beginning when you first started, what would you tell yourself? Like, what is there any advice? Not to change anything, because everything that you've gone through has led you to where you're at now, right? But if you could go back and just kind of talk to yourself, maybe to say, you know, hang in there, or things are going to be okay, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell myself the same, like, it'll be okay. Like, don't get overwhelmed. I think it was the training aspect. It was a lot of overload when you go through training. You have to remember streets. You have to remember, you know, like the system, like policies and all that. So sometimes you got overwhelmed, like when you were in training and you're like, how am I going to do this? But I would probably go back to myself and like the training, like in the training class, not out in the floor, you know, taking calls, but the training self of myself. And be like, you know, you'll be all right, dude. Just go with the process. Like, you know, trust the process.
Yeah.
And like, go with it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you very much, man. Hang tight here for just 1 second. And it was awesome having you on, and just an honor to be here with all of you here at Aurora 911. So for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us on social media, and all of that can be done easily on links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with 2 I's.co/WTT podcast. This episode has been sponsored by In Digital, a leader next gen core services, and a big shout out as always to subscribers. Thank you so very much. You can see this on Facebook, YouTube, as well as X and LinkedIn Live, and then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and within the trenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.